Thank you everyone for coming today to join us in celebrating the life of Anne Evans Dawes, our mum, nanny and friend to all. Could I just ask if you could all please turn off your phones just before we start the service this morning. Mum was born on August the 11th, 1936 at Mossman, the second child to Edith Mary Violet Tebbit and Leonard John Steele. Together they lived in Harbour Street at Mossman, along with elder brother John, who's here today. From 1942 to 1948, Mum attended Mossman Public School, and it was here that she met a number of dear friends who became such an important part of her life. She met Enid Reynolds in Year 1, who has been such a lovely friend throughout her life, and Barb Kenyon, who will be watching the stream this morning from Queensland, who became great friends a few years later. Other dear friends at primary school were Marg, Jill and Paddy. Mum then went on to Neutral Bay Junior Girls High School, later to become Cremorne Girls High School, where she again established many great friendships and lifelong friends. She loved attending the regular Old Girl Reunion Association lunches, celebrations and get-togethers to reminisce about old times with friends Enid, Judith, Anne and Moya. As a young girl, Mum was a very talented dancer, particularly ballet. From an early age, she starred in many of the productions by the famous Mavis Sykes Dancing Academy and the Mossman Musical Society. In 1946, when she was just 10, she danced in the production of Dick Whittington and His Cat, opposite John Mellion, who was later to become one of Australia's leading actors. And the following year, she played the lead role of Snow White. And Enid was just mentioning a little moment ago what a wonderful dancer she was as a young girl. Mum was also a very accomplished sports girl, junior school sports captain, and she won ribbons at athletics at high school. A capable tennis player also, and had excellent ball skills and hand-eye coordination. When we were quite young, Mum often used to juggle eggs in the kitchen and then delight in tossing them around randomly to us. I particularly love this game, and I thank Mum very much for this early training, which definitely contributed to my half-decent ball skills, even though it would often end up with scrambled eggs on the floor. But Mum was never one to worry about such trivialities. After completing her leaving certificate at high school, Mum enrolled in a secretarial course, learning shorthand and typing, where she attained 130 words a minute shorthand and 89 words a minute typing. At the age of 18, Mum began work as a stenographer and worked at the Cumberland County Council for 4 years. In 1957, Mum met our dad, Richard Scotter, and with cousin Bev and friend Barb as bridesmaids, they were married. They first lived at Burwood, then at Roseville, and then in 1959 they saw an advertisement for a new block, a new area, a property at 5 Bimble Place, West Killara, and this became our family home. 3 children quickly followed in the space of 3 years. Sue in October 59, Mike in May 61, and myself in October 1962. Mum was a wonderful mother to us all as we grew up. We were so fortunate that Mum was always there for us, so supportive of our passions and so generous of her time. Even when Mum and Dad divorced in 1977, they both did everything possible to ensure that the split was as amicable as possible and didn't cause too much disruption for us 3 children. Mum decided then to return to full-time employment. She soon found a clerical position at the Ku-ring-gai College at East Lynfield. She later began working at Barker College, which was just up the road from her house in Russell Avenue, Wahroonga, working in the library. She thoroughly enjoyed her time at Barker College as a library assistant, where she met many new friends, including Felicity, June, Kay, Barbara, Elaine and Wendy. And her colleagues from Barker remain very loyal and dear friends to this day. It was around this time that Mum met and fell in love with her soulmate, the fun-loving Eric Dawes. And in 1986, when Mum was 50, they married and a new chapter in Mum's life began. Later that year, Mum retired from Barker and enjoyed a far more relaxed lifestyle. She began to travel more broadly, and Eric and her would plan small trips and excursions to various locations, camping, caravanning, fishing, and generally having a fun, carefree and pretty spontaneous time. In 1990, they went on a world cruise on the SS Canberra to England and travelled around Europe. And this trip certainly ignited Mum's love for Europe. She and Eric particularly enjoyed shipboard life and especially listening to the classical music performances in the piano bar each afternoon. Sadly, Eric and Mum were only together for about 10 years before Eric passed away in 1994. Over the next 15 years, Mum went on a further 5 trips to Europe, and especially to her favourite places of Austria and Switzerland. She also enjoyed numerous Australian trips and cruises with friends from Fernbank and also with brother John. Mum moved into Fernbank over 20 years ago and remained there up until just a few months ago. Sadly, Mum's health declined quite rapidly in the last 6 months, both physically and cognitively. She had numerous visits to a variety of hospitals, and each time Mum would handle the situation with her usual calmness and acceptance. She was always amazingly positive and patient about everything, about the condition of the hospital, the quality of the hospital food, the lovely nursing staff and doctors. The only thing she would usually be concerned about was, when will I be getting back home? Mum always took an interest in the people she met and made them feel special and important, a wonderful quality to aspire to. The last few weeks have been incredibly difficult for all, but Mum has certainly been out of pain. She's been comfortable and has been surrounded by her family with classical music and the words, good wishes and prayers of her family and friends. And I'm sure that Mum would reflect that she has had a very full, happy and content life. I'd now like to ask my brother Mike to say a few words.
I'll need my glasses. Mum was such a kind and selfless person and would always start a conversation by asking after myself and the family, quickly deflecting my questions on how she was doing. Also, she was very giving and generous and known in the family for her baking skills. My favourites being a marzipan slice and a coconut ice and a wonderful Christmas cake that she was still making up till just a few years ago. It was spectacular. This was the way she was, always putting others first, even during the last few months when she was declining in health. That's why it's great she took up something in later life that she loved to do for herself but had not been a focus due to bringing up the 3 kids. And that passion was travelling, as Dave has mentioned. She became very adept at planning these trips and kept great travel diaries, which we've been recently reading. She noted that I managed to get her a business class upgrade from Paris to Singapore once and made some underlined mentions in the diary such as, what luxury, hot towels, food, and thanks, Mike. Perhaps thanks to her, the travel bug has been instilled in me as well. When Lynn and I and our 2 young boys moved overseas for more than 7 years for work, Mum visited us in New Zealand and then Malaysia a number of times, despite the quite oppressive heat of Kuala Lumpur, of which she wasn't a fan, the heat that is, not Kuala Lumpur. She wanted to spend time with us and her young grandchildren, and we took her on a few trips to resorts in Malaysia, which was great for us all to spend some time together. She was a wonderful and caring mother who enjoyed life and made her family and friends a real focus. I've also a message from my only nephew Graham, my cousin I should say, her nephew Graham, who lives in Indonesia and can't be with us today, and hopefully he's watching us. Hello, Graham. Auntie Anne, as I've always called her, was a warm presence in my life until her passing. As an only child, I grew up with Sue, Mike and Dave as my surrogate brothers and sisters and saw their mother and father regularly. We were always close, and as I grew up, she took an interest in my life, largely spent overseas, and enjoyed hearing of my adventures. She never forgot to send me a birthday card wherever I was with a nice note. It was lovely seeing her on my trips back home. It was as though we had never been apart. Our love for each other never dwindled through absence. She was very close to my dear mother and frequently visited her in the nursing home. They had known each other since they were young. When I was ill some years ago, it was Auntie Anne who came to visit me and showed her concern about my well-being. She was a truly kind, compassionate and generous person. She had many friends at the retirement village where she lived until recently and was highly regarded by the other residents. I heard this all the time from them when I mentioned that I was her nephew. Aside from being a wonderful mother to her 3 children, my cousins, she was a wonderful aunt to me. I will miss her very much, but will always love her. Thank you. That's from Graham Steele. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Mike. I'd now like to ask someone who's known Mum Anne for longer than anyone else, Big Brother John. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. I was saddened by the news of Anne's death after seeing her both with her family only days ago. Anne had a young life in Harbour Street, Mossman, with her parents and grandparents. She enjoyed an active physical life, learning ballet dancing and the piano, and made firm school friends. Her good school marks enabled her to attend Neutral Bay Girls High School. My wife Margaret and I saw a lot of Dick and Anne at Killara and her children, and once Graham still retains a close friendship. Anne will be remembered. She made many long affectionate friends in her long life. Anne, rest in peace. Thank you, Dave.
Rona is one of Mum's daughter-in-laws and spends a lot of time with Mum over the years, and will now like to say a few words.
Dearest Anne, Lynn and I won the jackpot in having you as our mother-in-law, and we cannot express our gratitude enough for everything you did for us. Family meant everything to you, and you wrapped your arms around us all so lovingly, protecting, encouraging, and supporting each one of us. When I first arrived on the scene over 40 years ago, you made me feel so included, welcoming me with open arms and treating me like your own daughter. We had a special connection, and we shared a love of many things, of children, swimming, sun worshipping, pretty flowers, jewellery, travel, and of baking. There will be few people here today who have not sampled your delicious slices, recipes that you generously passed on and have now become a special part of my culinary repertoire. Examples of these are her date slice, her chocolate caramel slice, and as Mick has already told you, her delicious Christmas cake. Anne, you helped Dave and me so much with our 3 children, babysitting them regularly when I started back at work. Trina, Em and Locke adored their afternoons spent with Nanny. You always had so much fun with them. Your soft whistle and gentle yoo-hoo call arising from the stairwell would announce your arrival and always bring a flurry of excitement. You'd then ascend the stairs, arms laden with little surprises and home-baked goodies. And that was just the start. For the next few hours, giggles and laughter could be heard as you treated the kids to exciting games and activities, as well as lots of hugs, cuddles, and massages. Your wonderfully simple yet creative treasure hunts proved to be a favourite and put my efforts at entertaining the children to shame. As the kids grew older, you still came to visit regularly, remaining very involved in our family activities and always bringing much love and laughter. You also became a treasured friend to my extended family, many of whom also referred to you as Nanny. When my dear mum passed 11 years ago, you offered a listening ear, a shoulder to cry on, and gave me advice when I needed, and I appreciated this so very much. 3 years ago now, you attended your eldest granddaughter, Katrina's wedding. What a proud moment for you, and something that will remain a very special memory for Trina and Sam. You also had the opportunity to meet two great-grandchildren. 2-year-old Adie loved visiting you at Fernbank, having diddly-dums sung to him as you bounced him on your knee, just as you had done with your own children and grandchildren. A favourite memory, though, is watching him sitting alongside you at the piano just earlier this year, as you tinkled on the ivories and ever so gently encouraged him to play along too. Just over a month ago now, we even managed a sneaky roadside introduction with your newest great-grandson, 2-month-old Rumi, another precious moment. Everyone who knew you, Anne, remembers how kind, warm, gentle and selfless you were. But there was so much more to you. You were also capable and independent, fun yet sincere. You were generous, and even when you faced some tough challenges and when your health began to decline, you never complained and your beautiful nature shone through. Your greatest gift, though, Anne, was just being you. Thank you, Anne, for your help and a lifetime of memories, adventures, and love. I am indebted to you for the beautiful traits Dave has inherited from you, especially your positivity, kindness, and contentment. You were the sweetest, warmest, and most playful lady I have known, and I feel honoured and grateful to have had you as my mother-in-law. You were the best. I am going to miss you so much, but I'm happy you can now be at peace. Thank you, Anne, for all you have brought to our family. Love you always.
Thank you, Rona. Lovely words. As we've heard earlier, Mum loved travel and family, and as Mike said, we've been reading some of her journals recently, which is very illuminating and interesting. She did plan all her trips amazingly, wrote down everything she spent and where she was on trains and everything. But she always spoke so excitedly of the places she'd visited, but the final entry in every trip that she had was always the same. So glad to be home to see my family at each one. And I'd now like to ask Emily and Nathan, two of Mum's 7 grandchildren, to say a few words on behalf of the grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Thanks.
Nanny was the epitome of a grandmother for myself and my brother Julian. As Julian can confirm, whether it's the nifty urging to eat more snacks behind Mum's back, or the similarly sneaky envelopes of money she would slide into the pockets of my brother and I, she always carried that true essence of a kind, gentle grandmother. There are many things I will never forget about her. Her mannerisms, her perfume, the way she would expressively gasp and utter words like, "Oh, beautiful," yeah. As a child, I remember holding her in such high regard that I considered her to be on the same level of greatness as Santa Claus. Yeah. I'll remember how she would come over to our house and sit down at the piano, those lovely tunes echoing around the rooms as they will do so later today. Nanny is not truly gone. I can see her so clearly through my Aunt Sue, not only in her face, but also through her gentleness. I can see Nanny even in my own father's face, though maybe that gentleness didn't quite carry, I don't know. Yeah. She has coloured every one of our lives in some way, and we won't be forgetting that anytime soon. The final interaction I had with Nanny was the time I borrowed her car, actually, to drive down to Canberra. The last ever thing she said to me, was to take care of it. So just as she would tell us now, just as she would want, let's all take care of ourselves as we remember her today. We will miss her dearly. Thank you.
The lady who most of you know as Ann Dawes is my nanny. Trina, Locke and I are so thankful that we got to spend so much of our lives with her. Some of my fondest memories are the nights she babysat us. From treasure hunts to arts and crafts and baking to aeroplane mouthfuls and storytelling, she always knew how to inspire us and keep us entertained. She tried to teach us how to play the piano, patiently playing with us and more recently for us. She also always made time to give Bundy and Bungie, our beautiful golden retrievers, a pat and some love. On numerous occasions, you would find us all curled up on the couch together in fits of laughter, whilst we took turns participating in our very own family talent show. Almost always, this resulted in Locke dressing up in drag. I remember being enchanted by her recollections of her youth, particularly the stories about her childhood sweethearts, crushes, and first loves. Lately, I noticed she loved to reminisce about our individual personalities and quirks that she had witnessed over the years as she babysat us, always recounting these memories with such delight and joy. Trina, Locke and I, and often Dad too, had a habit of requesting massages from Nanny, the kind where she would so carefully and precisely count each individual vertebrae of our spine, which was her little specialty. And even as she got older, when her arthritic hands began to shake and her strength was clearly deteriorating, we had the audacity to ask for more. Nanny, so generously and unselfishly, would give in to our relentless demands and put every effort into checking all 33 bones were still there. When visiting Nanny, we would ransack her cupboards in search of her homemade goodies and sweet treats, as well as the stuffed toys she held onto for us grandkids. From coffee dates, brekkies and family dinners, to phone calls, home visits, farm trips and cuddles, Nanny acted out of devotion and always gave us her undivided attention. She was always there to celebrate our successes, every birthday, milestone or big celebration, accompanied by a sweet smile on her face, and enthusiastically invested in our interests and passions. She was always the first to ask how we are and what we're up to, never feigning interest, even after some discussions around unorthodox viewpoints and some questionable decisions involving body piercings. These, as well as countless other memories, I will cherish forever. I've always thought of the kind of love a grandma has for her grandchildren as a love without condition. Though she may not have approved of everything we did, may not have liked some of the decisions we made, she didn't criticise, she didn't judge. She just kept loving, kept being there, and kept showing up. From what I saw, I think Nanny treated everyone with this kind of love. She was sweet, she was warm, welcoming, and accepting of all, and she had the ability to make everyone feel special. She oozed gentleness and kindness. She made me feel safe, worthy, and adored. I am grateful that I got to spend some time with Nanny over the last fortnight, and even more so that I could finally return the favour, giving her a final little back scratch by her bedside at her request. We love you dearly, Nanny, and will miss you immensely. I feel comforted knowing that I'll forever be reminded of you in every back scratch or massage, at every high tea event, when sipping from a beautiful teacup and saucer and biting into a petit four, and when we hear someone running their fingers lightly over the piano keys in legato style.
Thank you, Nathan and Emily. Lovely. As we heard, classical music was such a love of Mum's, and she was such a talented pianist. She was so organised and prepared. She had the music for the start and the finish of today's service prepared, And the music you'll soon hear, which accompanies the slideshow, is an actual recording of Mum playing some of her favourite pieces. I'd now like to ask Sue to come and say a few words. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thanks. We are so fortunate to have had Mum in our lives. We have so much to thank her for and so many kindnesses to remember. Mum was a really loving and fun person to be around. I remember being so impressed by some of her magic tricks that Dave has mentioned. Juggling 3 eggs with one hand, eating a whole apple, storing the seeds and the stalk inside of her mouth, and then very slowly producing the stalk at the end. Picking things up from the floor using her toes, and best of all for me, pretending to take the top of her thumb off. She allowed us lots of independence when we were young. Mike and Dave and I enjoyed venturing into the Lane Cove National Park on our own, and as long as we cooeyed every now and then she and we knew we were safe. Mum adored being a grandmother. Nothing was too much trouble. There were so many times she met me at the restaurant to babysit our 2 small boys. They were always overjoyed to see Nanny. We found this piece of some words that Mum had written down. It says a lot about Mum, and I think it is her message to us today. Memories bring comfort when those we love have gone. For in our hearts and in our thoughts they always linger on. The leaves of memories softly fall. Gently we gather and treasure them all. Sunshine passes and shadows fall, but precious memories outlast them all.
Thank you everyone for joining us this morning and celebrating Mum's life. We hope you can join us for refreshments in the Wallamata Conference Centre very shortly, which is just around the corner, and share a few stories and more memories about Mum and Nanny. Farewell, Mum. You will be greatly missed.